Today we are going to make key lime tarts. Now this recipe is in your safety and sanitation unit, and what's going to happen is there are going to be two recipes made during this unit. One are the Dutch apple tarts, or the apple streusel tarts, and the key lime tarts. And at each table, one group will make the key lime and one will make the apple. And while one group is making their tarts, the other group is going to be evaluating them for their sanitation and safety practices, almost like inspecting them like a restaurant. And so we're going to go through this process so that you can see how it's done. All right, for the key lime tarts, we are going to make a homemade graham cracker crust. So we have taken a package of graham crackers, and I'm going to show you an easy way to make these into crumbs. Now, a lot of times in class, we will buy graham cracker crumbs in bulk because they're actually cheaper than buying all these individual boxes of graham crackers from Jewel. So then you would just need to measure it and you wouldn't have to roll them up. So you put your graham crackers in a Ziploc bag and seal it, and then you just take a rolling pin over it. Now, if you're at home and you don't have a rolling pin, you can use a glass, but I'd be careful not to use a glass one because you don't want it to shatter in your hand. But you could use a plastic tumbler type glass. You could actually use the bottom of a measuring cup, anything like that. I would just be leery of using a glass, drinking glass, in case you put too much pressure on it and it's shattered in your hand. Okay. What's nice about this is you can get these graham crackers very fine. You can see exactly which ones still need to be crushed some more, and do all of that without making any mess. Almost done here. For key lime, even if you're making a full-size key lime pie is almost always served in a graham cracker crust. Alright, so all of this looks nice and fine, so I'm going to measure out what I need into a bowl. Now, the measurements for this are really weird. And they're really weird not because the recipe is, but because we've scaled down the recipe to make a reasonable amount for class, so that's why these amounts get kind of goofy. We need a 1/4 cup. Then we need 2 tablespoons. And then we need 2 teaspoons. Now, if you have extra graham crackers, you need to save those, and your teacher will probably have a bowl for you to put those in for the next class or another group. Okay. Then we need a tablespoon of sugar, which I have already pre-measured for you. Okay, so that goes in here to sweeten it up, and it's sticking. There we go. There's our tablespoon of sugar. And then we need just under 2 tablespoons of butter. So it's just a smidge under that. And then we need a teaspoon of lime zest. Okay? So these limes, what I've done is first I washed them because all produce has, insecticides and pesticides. But what's really important is you must dry it before you start zesting it, or all that water will end up in your zest. All right, and then you can just use a grater with very small holes. They also make zesters that are even smaller holes until you get your zest off. Okay, and anywhere there's green, you can go back there and get some of the zest. Okay, so I've already zested quite a bit here to save time. And we need 1 teaspoon of lime zest. All right, now we need to mix this up, and this is going to be the crust for our tarts. Now I'm using a fork because that helps me smash the butter, and then those little pieces of butter get coated with graham crackers. It's kind of like the whole process of cutting in, which you will do when you make biscuits. Okay, almost done here. You want to make sure there's no great big pieces of butter left. Now the reason you need butter in this is when you bake these, the butter will melt and fuse all the little granules of graham cracker together to form a crust. Okay, now you're going to take a mini muffin pan and put your liners in it. Now these liners keep popping out, but once we have the crust and the filling in there, they should sink down into the bottom of the pan. Okay? If they don't, that will still be okay because they will help the muffin hold its shape. Okay. Now the recipe says to put a teaspoon in each one of these, so we'll start like that. That's not the right measuring spoon. There we go. So we'll go through and do this. Then after you've gone through and done all 12, if you have extra filling left, you can divide that evenly between the rest of the muffin tins. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead to the next step to show you, and then I'll go back and finish these. What you're going to do is you're going to press this into the bottom of the muffin tin. So your goal is to kind of coat the bottom of the muffin paper. Okay, like so. I don't know if you can see that there, but you want to kind of press, and you have to be gentle. You can't do it real hard or your finger will go right through it. Okay, so you can see you're making a little crust in the bottom of the paper. Okay. Okay, so we're going to pause here for a minute and I will get all. Okay, we have filled all of our muffin papers. Now as I went through, it actually worked to put 2 teaspoons in each of these little muffin tins. So that is, and your recipe probably says that now because we've corrected it since this was published. But anyway, these go in the oven at 375 for about 5 minutes. So we're going to go ahead and put them in. And I'll set the timer for 5 so that I remember to check it. So I'm going to go ahead and start on the filling. The filling, we need 1 egg yolk, plus we need a little bit of another egg yolk. And I need, I'll just separate it by shell. Alright, so this is another method of separating eggs. I actually prefer an egg separator, but this works just as well. You just have to be really careful. Okay. Alright, so that worked just fine. Alright. We need 1 egg yolk plus a teaspoon of another egg yolk. Now the whole purpose of egg yolk in the key lime recipe is to thicken. Alright? When eggs cook, and I'm sure you guys know this, if we scramble this egg, it gets thick. If you make a hard-boiled egg, it gets very solid. I mean, it gets completely solid. So when this egg cooks in the recipe, it's going to thicken up, kind of like pudding. It would thicken the key lime. So this gets beaten. So this is 1 egg yolk plus a teaspoon of another egg yolk. Alright. Now I'm going to put that into this bowl because I'm going to be putting all the ingredients in there. Okay, now we need 4.6 ounces of sweetened condensed milk, and that is a weird measurement. So I'm going to put that on the scale. So I turn the scale on, and you need to be patient and wait a minute while it gets ready to work. Okay. And you need to get it in ounces, and I believe that's grams. Ounces. Okay, so we're at ounces. So sweetened condensed milk is very thick and dense. Okay, 4.3. Okay, 4.6. Okay, so I will add that in. Sweetened condensed milk is very, very sweet. And if you're unsure of how they get sweetened condensed milk, they take regular milk and they evaporate it, meaning they have the water evaporate out. That's also called evaporated milk, and that's used in cooking for other things. But then for sweetened condensed milk, they replace all that water with sugar. So sweetened condensed milk is about 60% sugar and 40% milk. Okay. Now we add in our lime zest, and we need, I believe, another teaspoon of lime zest. And we need 3 tablespoons of lime juice. Now, I'm going to check our buzzer went off and our crusts are done, and those baked at 375 for about 5 minutes. Now, something you need to do when you're cooking is have read through your recipe ahead of time, and one thing I noticed was that the tarts bake at 350. So I've lowered my oven temperature now to 350 so that when I add it in again, my oven is at the correct temperature. Okay, we need 3 tablespoons of lime juice. So what I've done here is I've already juiced the limes. And again, I did that. I rolled the limes between my hands to break it up, cut them in half, and then I used a fork in the lime and kept squeezing. Now, if you look in here, you may or may not be able to see all those tiny little seeds. And that is not something we want in our tarts. So, if you have a nice strainer at home, a strainer that has the screen, you can simply pour that through it. Another option you have is to use cheesecloth. And I'm just going to lay the cheesecloth in this colander, and if you see, the seeds would go right through those holes. So I'm going to put this here and strain it right into another bowl. Okay. And you can pick this up to kind of speed up the process. And all the seeds then are caught in our cheesecloth. Alright, so we'll start measuring our lime juice. Now you can also use key limes for a key lime pie, which is what I do at home. Key limes are the very small limes, they're about this big. Advantage, they have a little different taste than limes, I actually prefer them, but the disadvantage is you have to squeeze a whole bunch of key limes to get juice. So you would probably have to squeeze 5 or 6 key limes to get enough juice for this recipe. Also, those key limes are typically, sometimes you can get them at Jewel. I typically get them at Mexican grocery stores. You buy them by the bag, so you get a whole bunch in a bag. Okay, so now we have all the ingredients in here, so you just stir. And that's a real quick mix, okay? All right, now we're going to spoon this in to our crust. And again, the recipe says about a teaspoon. Well, if there's extra left, then we will do that. And from the looks of this, I'm going to guess right away that we can probably do 2 teaspoons. So I'm going to start with 1 teaspoon. And we'll be back in just a minute. Okay, we have put filling in all of these, and it was a heaping teaspoon that went into each one of these. So you can just overfill the teaspoon and scoop it in, and it will be just about perfect. Now these have to bake. Now if you were making a full-size pie, they would bake about 15 minutes. I think I'm going to check these in 7 or 8, since it's such a small amount of filling, it's not very thick. Alright, so we will show you these. Okay, our key lime tarts have come out of the oven, and they're just starting to brown on top, which lets you know they are done. Now there's many different things you can do to garnish, but typically key lime pie does get some whipped cream. Now you don't want to go crazy with this, but just a little dollop on the top. And then I will show you a couple different ways. You could take a tiny little wedge of lime and just put it right there in the top. Or you could take a tiny piece of lime peel and kind of twist it. Whoops, I missed there. There we go. And lay that on the top. You could take some lime zest and just sprinkle that on the top. Now, if you remember from Culinary Basics, less is more. So to do all 3 of those on one of these tiny little tarts would be overkill. It's just a little bit to decorate the top. Enjoy!